In this video, I'm going to break down the 3 steps to destroy your self-sabotage. So if you're watching this, you're likely an entrepreneur, a high achiever, or a high performer, but you're held back by some type of mental block. Like something is holding you back, but you haven't quite figured it out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through this process that I have used to overcome self-sabotage, to overcome fear and self-doubt, and all of those things that are holding you back. So make sure you watch until the end, because I want to make sure that you are able to break through and overcome whatever is holding you back. So the first thing is, I want you to understand that you are so much more capable than you realize. And I've said this before, but if you're in a position where you feel like something is holding you back, it's actually a good thing, because what that means is you're in an uncomfortable situation where you're learning and you're growing and you're expanding. And anytime you are trying to expand, that's when your mind or your brain is trying to keep you safe. And that's really what causes a lot of the self-sabotage, the self-doubt, and the imposter syndrome, is this fear of you changing, this fear of you growing, and these fears that hold us back. And so I have felt those fears before really doing a lot of the most transformative things that I've ever done in my life. They have all been faced with fear and self-sabotage, and it's helped me. I've come back to this exercise time and time again. And this exercise that I'm going to walk you through has helped me basically make the decision to quit my job, which was very stable. I love the people that I worked with, and I made really good money, but it wasn't fulfilling to me. And I knew that I was meant for more. I knew that I was meant to be an entrepreneur and to share and to coach and to change people's lives. So this exercise helped me quit my job, go all in as an entrepreneur. It's helped me start my podcast and help it grow to one of the top 5% podcasts out of the 3.1 million podcasts in the world. It's helped me create content on Instagram and YouTube and overcome that fear of becoming a creator and putting myself out there. And it's something that has helped me every time I felt fear from completing big endurance events. I've done multiple Ironmans, multiple ultra marathons, and then I've also completed the Ultraman, which is a 3-day, 321-mile ultra triathlon. So every single time I've been faced with a fear and a decision about should I do something or not, I've come back to this exercise. And this is not an exercise that I personally came up with. This exercise is called fear setting. And it's something that I actually learned from Tim Ferriss, who's one of my favorite podcasters and entrepreneurs. And he has a TED Talk, which is called The Most Valuable Exercise I Do Every Month. And I highly recommend that you go and watch it. I don't know how many millions of views, but he walks through that process as well. And so the main thing is to use this fear setting process anytime you're faced with fear, self-doubt, self-sabotage, because it will help you overcome the fear that you have. And so there's 3 steps to it. And the first step is really to define your fears. And this is the opposite of what most people think, because most people think that you need to avoid your fears, or anytime you have fear, it's a bad thing. But the most effective thing that you can actually do is define exactly what you're afraid of. And you want to start with just listing out what are the things that I'm worried about, what's the worst case scenario, and what might go wrong with whatever it is. So maybe it's that you're in your corporate job and you want to leave and start a new business, but you're afraid of not being able to make money. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of what other people would think. Maybe you're an existing entrepreneur and you're thinking about pivoting what you focus on. Maybe you're thinking about creating a new product. Maybe you're thinking about starting a podcast, YouTube, whatever it is. You want to define your fears. Then you want to get into what you could do to prevent those fears from happening. And then you want to get into, if those worst case scenario things happened, how could you recover? And so I've got this chart that could kind of explain this a little bit better. So in these 3 different columns, the first thing that you want to do is list out what are the worst things that could happen, what am I actually afraid of, and come up with all of the things that you are afraid of. Get those out on paper, list it out. And then right next to that, for each thing that you're afraid of happening, you want to list out, how do I prevent that from happening? So assuming that you have some control over what you're doing, you can start to think about what are the things that you could put in place to prevent that from happening. So you could hire a mentor. You could buy a course. You can put some guardrails around how much risk you're going to take. You can set a timeline of when you want to make this change. There's a lot of things that you can do to prevent these fears from actually happening. And then here's a really helpful thing as well. Once you've done the fears and what you've listed out how to prevent it, you want to list out, how could I, if the worst happens, how could I repair it? So let's say that you're afraid of like quitting your job and going all in on your business, and then you don't make as much money as you did at your previous role. If that happens, how could you recover? You like, just being real, you could get another job. You could focus more of your time and energy on that new role. You could hire a mentor that could help you, like help point out where you're going wrong. I don't know exactly what it is, but once you understand what you're afraid of and how you could actually overcome it, even if it did happen, the fear starts to dissipate. It starts to be less powerful and less impactful. And so this is the most important thing to start with, is to list out, what are all the fears? How do you prevent them from happening? And if that actually happens, how could you repair it? So this is the first part of the exercise. And this is where most people go. They just think about all of the things that could possibly go wrong. And that's what your mind and your brain does. And your brain does that just to keep you safe and to keep you alive. It's basically, its number one role is to keep you safe and to keep you alive and keep you functioning. So any sort of threat, it is going to try and eliminate that threat, and it's going to try and point out all the things that could go wrong. And that's the first part. But the second part is to now shift into, what are all of the benefits of taking action if you're successful or even partially successful? And this is where you want to kind of try and come up with as much evidence as you possibly can. What are all of the possible benefits for you of really going for it, of really like growing your business, of putting yourself out there, of being more authentic, starting your podcast, creating your content, whatever it is that you're currently afraid of? What are all of the possible benefits? And you want to think about this not just financially, but think about this emotionally, think about this mentally, think about this from a health perspective, think about this from your stress, from your physical health, your mental health. Think about it from all of those different areas. What are all of the benefits for you of working through the fear and working past it? Because once you start to see some of these benefits, you're probably going to see that there's more benefits than there are fears, but you're just focused on the fears. So that is part 2. List out the benefits of success or partial success. Now, step 3 is the one that I would say less than 1% of people really think about when they're making a decision. Most people just focus on what could go wrong. Some people think about what could go right, but very few people think about the cost of inaction. And what this means is, if I avoid doing this thing, what might I miss out on? Emotionally, physically, financially, mentally, spiritually, all of it. And what you want to do is you want to put the date, you want to actually write it down 6 months from today. So I'm recording this in January. Let's pretend that it's July of 2024. What are the costs of inaction? Basically saying, what am I going to miss out on 6 months from now if I don't do this thing that I'm thinking about and that I'm afraid of? And then asking yourself again, 1 year from now, what are the costs of inaction in this time period? And then what you want to do is you want to list out 3 years from now, what are the costs of inaction in this time period? So 6 months, 1 year, 3 years. And once you do this activity, I really want you to take this part seriously and really like close your eyes and put yourself in that future scenario, imagining you're exactly where you're at. Imagining you haven't made that change, you haven't taken that next step. How is that going to feel? when I have done this exercise, most of the time, what I feel is I feel like a sense of regret. I feel sometimes like a sense of shame that I let fear control my life. And it is a really powerful mindset shift to understand what are you going to miss out on. So those are the 3 steps. And then what you want to do is once you have filled out the fears, you've listed out what you're afraid of, how you could prevent it, and how you could recover if it actually happened. Once you list out all the potential benefits, and then once you list out the costs of inaction, what you want to do is you just want to reflect and like kind of take a step back and look at all of the information that you have. Most of the time when I have done this, I've recognized that the things that I am afraid of, I could either put something in place to avoid that failure entirely, or if I failed, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So that's one thing I typically recognize. Then I recognize that there's actually a lot of benefits, probably more benefits than fears. And then the real like kicker is emotionally, if I don't make this change, I'm going to be filled with a sense of regret. I'm going to be filled with a sense of frustration, and sometimes it's anger. And so once you really put it all together, the question to ask yourself is, what is the next best action that I want to take? So given that I know the fears, the benefits, and the cost of inaction, what am I going to do about it? What's my next best move? And for a lot of people, the next move is to take that next step. And sometimes you can be super decisive and you can just know, yep, this is exactly what I need to do. And you act on it. And the key thing is to try to act on it as quickly as possible once you're in this state, because you've already started to make that shift. And there's decision making, and then there's courage and follow through. A lot of times people, when you're in an emotion of fear, it's hard to make a decision. But once you make that decision that you're going to move forward, the next part is to actually follow through on that decision and to carry it out. And that's where courage comes in. And so if you're watching this, like, I really want to encourage you to take that next step, and whatever your fear is, like, take it on, take action as quickly as possible, and make it happen for yourself. But if after going through this exercise, you want to talk to me about what those fears are, those benefits, and what those costs of inaction are, and help you either make the decision or help you act on the decision with courage, then go ahead and book a call on using the link in the comments or in the description, and we'll make that happen for you, because this has been probably one of the most transformative exercises that I've ever done, and it is responsible for me being able to accomplish all of those things that I honestly don't know if I would have accomplished those or been able to even be in this position if I didn't work through that fear. And if I didn't like really work through that fear, it's like I don't even know where I would be. And so I really want to encourage you to take this exercise seriously, actually commit to it, make it happen with a fear and a decision that you are faced with, because I'm so confident that once you go through this process, that you will be able to make the best decision for you and your growth in 2024 and beyond. And so if you've gotten to this far in the video, I just want to encourage you, because I believe in you. And sometimes we just need somebody to believe in us. And I think that this exercise can help you build that belief. But I believe in you. I believe you can make it happen. So take the next step and go through the process.